I'm Bailey Weston, 27 years old, and 2 months ago I got a call that made my blood run cold. My little sister Tess, whispering at 3 a.m. that our mother's boyfriend had thrown her against a wall, and our mom told her she was being dramatic. I dropped everything and drove 5 hours through a storm to bring her to safety. I thought that would be the end of it, but the bruises weren't the whole story. What we uncovered next shattered everything I thought I knew about family. And the day we walked into that courtroom with the truth, I finally understood. We weren't just fighting for justice. We were reclaiming every piece of ourselves they tried to erase. Before I share what really happened, let me know where you're tuning in from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to stand up to the people who were supposed to protect you. This might be the story you've been waiting to hear. The first time my phone buzzed, I ignored it. It was 3:04 a.m., and I was rinsing out beer glasses behind the bar, hands wrinkled from warm water, mine somewhere between the closing register and the headache I knew I'd have in the morning. The second buzz was longer, insistent, like a nudge from someone who doesn't care if you're exhausted. The screen flashed a name I hadn't seen light up this late in years: Tess, my little sister. My heart thumped once, loud. She never called this late. Hell, she never called at all unless it was serious. I dried my hands fast and picked up, stepping outside the back door into the alley where the rain hit sideways. "Tess?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, but my body already knew something was wrong. Her voice came through soft, strained, like she had to push each word through a tunnel of pain. "He threw me, Bailey, Dean, against the wall." I felt the silence expand between us. "Then he kicked me," she added, voice breaking. "I can't. Move my arm. I'm bleeding." She paused. "And Mom says I'm being dramatic again." Her voice cracked then. She just walked away. A sharp chill ran down my spine, and it wasn't from the rain soaking through my sweater. My jaw locked. I could hear movement in the background, a door shutting, footsteps, then our mother's voice, cut glass cold and cruelly familiar. "Tess, stop with the tears. You fall. You bruise. Life goes on. Quit acting like it's some damn emergency." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. "Can you get somewhere safe? Can you lock a door?" Tess hesitated. "I'll try the pantry," she whispered. "The bedroom lock's still broken. He kicked it in last month." Her breathing was uneven. I thought it would stop. I was already moving. Back inside, I grabbed my keys, coat, and backpack in one motion. I scribbled a note for my upstairs neighbor, Ellie, and slid it under her door. "Emergency. Please check on Bear. We'll call soon." Bear was my dog, a rescue mutt who didn't like storms and hated being alone. I pulled the hood of my coat up and jogged through the storm to my car, soaked in 30 seconds. The streets of Seattle were empty, lit in amber by flickering lamps and flashing construction signs. My fingers shook as I started the engine. GPS said 5 hours to Elk Ridge. I didn't blink. I could make it in 4. The first hour passed in a blur of city lights and rage. Dean, still in that house, still putting hands on her, still getting away with it. I gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles burning white. I had warned Mom years ago, after the first time Tess showed up with a black eye and no explanation. But Martha had looked at me, unfazed, and said, "You always were too sensitive, Bailey. You don't understand how marriage works. You don't just throw a man out over a bad day." A bad day, as if bruises were side effects of stress, like migraines. Rain lashed the windshield, the wipers barely keeping up. I turned the music off. Silence made it worse, but noise made me angrier. My mind kept flashing back. Tess at 10, drawing flowers on the walls with chalk. Tess after the fall, her body stiff, her smile gone. And me, at 18, packing my things into garbage bags because I couldn't take it anymore. I had promised to come back for her, and maybe I thought I did. With birthday cards and texts and gift cards she wasn't allowed to spend. But I knew the truth now. I had left her behind. Somewhere past Spokane, I stopped for gas. The attendant looked at me like he wanted to ask if I was okay, but didn't. I must have looked wild, hood up, face pale, sleeves damp, eyes bloodshot from highway tears. I didn't speak, just handed him a 20, fueled up, and got back on the road. The temperature dropped as I climbed into the hills. Snow was falling now, just enough to dust the edges of the pines. It reminded me of winters in Elk Ridge, before Dean, before everything. Back when Mom used to sing while baking pies, and Tess wore mismatched mittens. That woman was long gone. The sign for Elkridge appeared at 7:18 a.m., faded and lopsided. Welcome to Elkridge, small town, big heart. The irony made my stomach turn. The road narrowed as I turned onto Birch Hollow Drive, gravel crunching under the tires. Fog clung to the trees, heavy and low. At the top of the hill, the house emerged from the mist like a memory I'd tried to bury. 2 stories, gray paint peeling, porch light flickering like it was gasping for air. I parked by the mailbox. The silence was unbearable. I walked to the front door and knocked. Once, no answer. Again, louder. Footsteps, a click. The door cracked open. Martha, my mother, robe tied tight, hair in rollers, face clean and expressionless. She blinked at me like I was a distant relative showing up unannounced. "You didn't need to come," she said. "It's already been handled." Her voice was clipped, practiced. Like this was a routine. I didn't answer. I pushed the door open with my shoulder and stepped inside. The house smelled like bleach and air freshener. Underneath, a sour trace of blood. I walked past her, into the kitchen. The tile floor had smudges, brown-red streaks leading to the fridge. She hadn't even finished cleaning. Tess was there, sitting against the cabinets, legs pulled to her chest, hoodie stained with blood. One eye was swollen shut, her nose stuffed with tissue. Her left hand cradled her right arm like it might fall off if she let go. She looked up, and something flickered in her expression. Not surprise, not pain, but the faintest light of relief. "You came," she whispered. Her voice cracked on the second word. I crouched down, reached for her hand, careful not to touch the bruises. "I'm here," I said, steady as I could manage. And I wasn't leaving without her. She looked even smaller in the daylight. Tess had always been petite, but now, curled into herself on that cold kitchen floor, she looked breakable. Like a vase someone knocked over and decided not to glue back together. Her cheeks were blotched with purple and red. The tissue stuffed in her nose already soaked through. She didn't cry. She just kept looking up at me like I was either a hallucination or the first warm thing she'd seen in days. I reached for her carefully, slid one arm behind her back and another under her knees, and lifted. She barely weighed anything. That scared me more than the bruises. I carried her past Martha, who stood in the hallway like a border guard. Her robe had slipped open just enough to reveal a tank top underneath. Spotless, not a hair out of place. "Bailey," she said evenly, as if I was a guest overstaying my welcome. "You can't just take her like this. It's not your place." I didn't answer. I didn't even stop walking. Her perfume, too sweet, like she was trying to mask something rotten, lingered in the narrow hallway. "You're making things worse," she called after me. Her voice didn't rise. That was her trick. Always calm, always in control. Ice dressed as civility. I got Tess into the car, adjusted the seat so it wouldn't press on her shoulder, and covered her legs with my jacket. She flinched when I buckled her in. Not at me, at the sound. Something in her body was conditioned to brace for pain when things clicked. When I shut the passenger door and turned back toward the house, Martha was standing on the porch now, arms folded. "You think you're rescuing her," she said, her lips thin. "But you're just dragging this family through the mud." She didn't sound angry. She sounded inconvenienced. Like I'd tracked dirt across her clean floors. "That's not mud," I said. "It's her blood." She didn't answer. Inside the house, the smell of bleach was stronger now. I don't know if she'd sprayed more while I was carrying Tess out, or if I was just noticing it fully for the first time. Either way, it was the wrong kind of clean. Chemical, frantic. Like someone trying to erase a crime with air freshener and denial. I walked through the kitchen again, slow this time, letting my eyes adjust. The blood was still there, smeared in streaks along the edge of the fridge and across 2 tiles beneath the sink. Not much, but enough to make it real. I opened the pantry door, the one Tess said she'd tried to hide in. The latch hung broken, barely attached. Inside, a pair of sneakers were tossed on top of canned soup and a folded-up yoga mat. No blankets, no water. It wasn't a hiding spot. It was a cupboard. My stomach tightened. I shut it gently, like slamming it would make the truth louder. "You don't get it," Martha said behind me, like she'd been waiting for her moment. "She's always been sensitive, since she was little. She cries when you raise your voice. She bruises if you look at her too hard. Dean didn't mean it. He just loses patience sometimes. Her tone shifted, like she was trying to reason with me. Marriage is complicated, parenting even more so. You can't judge what you walked away from. I turned slowly. I didn't walk away. I escaped. The words caught her off guard for half a second, and I saw something flicker in her expression. Not guilt. Martha never wore guilt. But discomfort. Like I'd said something unscripted. Something that didn't belong in her version of events. Back at the car, Tess was still silent. I climbed in, started the engine, and pulled out onto Birch Hollow Road without checking the rear view. I didn't want to see Martha watching us leave. Didn't want her face to be the last thing Tess saw before she closed her eyes. We drove in silence for a while, the fog clearing slowly as the sun crawled over the hills. I kept glancing at Tess, but she kept her gaze straight ahead. Not out the window, not at me, just forward. Like she was afraid that if she looked back, she'd be pulled under again. Eventually, I asked softly, "You okay to keep going? I have a place in mind, just outside town. You'll be safe." She nodded. Barely. "She said I made it up," she whispered after a few miles. "That I threw myself, that I've always been a liar." I didn't answer right away. I gripped the wheel tighter. "She's wrong," I said finally. "You don't have to prove anything to me." But the truth was, we'd have to prove it to everyone else. That was the part that made me angry. Not just what Dean did, not just what Martha allowed, but the fact that in a town like Elkridge, screaming didn't matter unless it came from the right person. And even then, it had to be neat, documented, clean. My sister didn't get clean. She got bleach and bruises and silence. But not anymore, not if I had anything to do with it. We drove in silence for nearly an hour after leaving that house, not because we ran out of things to say, because neither of us had figured out how to say them yet. The morning sun had broken through the clouds, but it didn't bring warmth, only a clearer view of the frost along the edges of the windshield. Tess kept her gaze fixed ahead, both hands in her lap, sleeves tugged down to hide the bruises I already saw, and I let her have that silence, because silence, at least, was hers to control now. I pulled into the gravel drive of a cabin just outside Deerfield Pines. It belonged to Jessie, an old friend who moved out of state last spring and let me keep the key. Secluded, quiet, warm. I killed the engine, unbuckled Tess gently, and helped her through the door. Her steps were small, cautious, like the floor might betray her too. I didn't rush her, I just followed close behind. Inside, the place smelled faintly of cedar and old coffee. Lived in, but safe. I wrapped her in a blanket, set her on the worn couch, and lit the fireplace like it was an act of defiance. She didn't speak again until her hands stopped shaking. And even then, her voice came like a question she'd asked herself too many times already. "Do you remember when I fell down the stairs, the winter before you left?" I looked up from the mug of tea I was making her. That fall had always bothered me. She'd had bruises down her spine and a hairline fracture in her wrist. But Mom had said she tripped chasing the cat. I believed it. Back then, I still believed a lot of things. "I remember," I said. She nodded slowly, eyes locked on the fire. "He pushed me. He was yelling because I left the hose running. Said I was wasting his money. I tried to back away and he grabbed my shoulder. Pushed hard. I don't even think he meant for me to fall. But when I hit the bottom, I couldn't move for a minute. I couldn't breathe." Her fingers twisted into the blanket like it was the only solid thing in the room. "He said if I told anyone, it would just prove I wasn't normal, that I was weak. And Mom, she said we couldn't afford another hospital visit. She iced my wrist and said to be more careful. I didn't interrupt. I wanted to. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive back to that house and tear it down with my bare hands. But I stayed still, because this wasn't about my rage. It was about her truth. Finally spoken. Finally heard. "You tried to ask once," she added. "That day you brought me that notebook with the glitter pens. You asked if I really fell. I almost told you, but she was in the kitchen, listening." I swallowed hard. That day came back to me like a slap. I remembered how she flinched when I hugged her, how she changed the subject. I'd been too wrapped in my own exit to dig deeper. And I hated myself for that. Hated how easy it was to believe the lies when they were wrapped in Martha's perfect calm. I should have pushed harder, I said quietly. Tess looked at me then, her voice just above a whisper. You were just a kid, Bailey. We both were. Maybe, but kids grow up. And I wasn't going to let anyone tell her to stay silent again. I stood and walked into the spare bedroom, grabbed one of the storage boxes I kept there, and returned with a small photo album, old pictures, childhood summers, birthdays, Christmas mornings before Dean. I handed it to her. This was before, I said, before everything changed, before they made you feel like a burden. She flipped through slowly. I saw the exact page she paused on. A photo of us in the snow, building a lopsided snowman, cheeks red from the cold, both of us laughing. It was the last winter before Dean moved in. After a long minute, she spoke again. I don't want to be scared anymore. I don't want to pretend like I'm fine just because it keeps everyone else comfortable. You won't, I said. Not anymore. We'll figure this out. Together. She closed the album gently and set it on the couch. Then she looked at me, not with tears, not with pity, but with something stronger. Resolve. Then we start with the truth, she said. All of it. And for the first time in years, I saw not the broken version of my sister they tried to reduce her to. I saw the girl who used to build forts out of blankets and lead imaginary armies. The one who was ready to fight for herself now. You can't rebuild without proof of what broke you. That's what I kept telling myself the next morning as I sat cross-legged on the living room floor, sorting through old files and half-packed boxes. After everything Tess said the night before, I knew this couldn't just be a rescue. It had to be a case. And cases needed evidence. Clean, cold, undeniable. Bruises fade, but paper speaks. Tess was still asleep in the spare room, curled up in a ball like her body hadn't gotten the memo that she was safe now. I didn't want to wake her. She'd earned rest. So I started small. A notebook she used to carry everywhere, pages torn and water-stained. A pair of letters from middle school teachers concerned about her chronic clumsiness. A hospital bill from 2019, listing a fractured rib but no police report. I flagged it all. I didn't know what would matter yet, but I knew better than to leave anything out. I opened the side pouch of her backpack next. Gum wrappers, a broken charm keychain. A crushed disposable camera I didn't recognize. When I clicked the shutter, it still made that soft, mechanical whine. Maybe nothing. Or maybe it had seen something we didn't. Then I reached for the hardback journal at the bottom. It looked like something out of a thrift store bin. Leather cover, torn corner. But when I opened it, the inside had been carved out. A hollowed rectangle, tucked inside, a flash drive, wrapped in an elastic hair tie. I didn't move right away. I just stared at it. My thumb pressed into the cutout edge of the book like I needed something to ground me. Because I knew what this meant. This wasn't some accident. This was preparation. My little sister had been planning for an emergency. She'd been waiting for the day no one could deny her anymore. I plugged the drive into my laptop, heart thudding in my ears. No password. Just 5 video files, all named with dates. The most recent one was from 2 weeks ago. I opened it first. Grainy hallway footage. You could barely make out the figures, but the audio was enough. Dean's voice shouting, loud and slurred. Tess's smaller voice, trying to explain something. Then the sound of a crash, like a body hitting drywall. Then silence, long, empty, heavy. I skipped to the second clip. This time, a bedroom. Low angle. Tess sitting on her bed, holding her phone in selfie mode, whispering into it. He told me today that if I reported him again, it would be worse. He said no one believes girls like me. That mom covered for him once, and she'll do it again. I think she will. My fingers froze over the keyboard. I knew how towns like Elkridge worked. I'd seen it before. People don't want drama. They want everything to stay quiet and polished. Especially when the man in question is known, respected. Part of the damn community board. That kind of man doesn't go to jail. He gets invited to Sunday barbecues and wins local hero plaques. But these videos, they shattered that. And there was more. The third clip showed something smaller but no less damning. A close-up of a bruise on Tess's wrist, in the exact shape of fingers. 3 days ago, her voice said from behind the camera. He grabbed me because I asked about my disability check. That one detail made me sit up straighter. He says I'm too immature to handle my own finances. Mom says it's better this way, that they're helping. I minimized the window, hands shaking now not from anger, but calculation. They weren't just hurting her, they were using her. Her body, her silence, her money. I backed up the footage on an encrypted folder and emailed it to a legal contact I'd met while bartending. Sharon, she owed me a favor or two. I didn't explain in the message. I just wrote, "You need to see this. It's real." An hour later, Tess woke. Her face was puffy, her shoulders stiff as she shuffled into the kitchen wearing one of my old sweatshirts. She didn't speak right away, just looked at me. I held up the flash drive. "You were smart to save this," I said. She nodded slowly, then walked past me to the window, pulling the curtain back just enough to peek outside. "Do you think they'll come looking?" she asked. "Probably," I replied. "But we're not hiding anymore." She turned to me then, eyes tired but clear, and said, "Then we fight." And I believed her. Because sometimes the strongest thing a girl can do isn't scream or run or hit back. It's document, wait, survive. And when the time's right, hit them with a truth so sharp it cuts clean through the lies. The truth had weight, and we were finally holding it. But holding truth isn't the same as knowing what to do with it. That flash drive changed everything, and yet, it also changed nothing. Dean was still out there, Martha was still spinning her web, and the system they relied on, still intact. So I did what I always did when the air got too heavy to breathe. I looked for the people they'd tried to erase. There was one person they never let us talk about. Uncle Henry, my dad's older brother. To hear Martha tell it, he was a criminal, a drunk, a bad influence we were lucky to be rid of. But I remembered him differently. He was the one who taught me how to tie knots, who showed me how to patch drywall after Dean accidentally punched through it, who gave Tess her first real sketchbook. Then one day, he was gone. No goodbye, no explanation, just erased. But I knew where he'd gone. He lived in a rusted trailer tucked deep in the woods behind North Elk Ridge, just past the county line. Locals called it Cinder Bend, a piece of land that didn't belong to anyone but the trees. It was a place people forgot on purpose, which made it perfect. I told Tess I'd be gone a few hours just to check on someone. She didn't ask who. She just nodded and handed me the flash drive. "Take it," she said, "in case something happens." That sentence hung in the air like a thread we didn't pull. The road to Cinderbend was barely a road, more like a dirt path with too many roots and too few signs. By the time I reached the clearing, my tires were caked in mud and my breath fogged the windshield. The trailer stood like a stubborn memory, faded blue, patched windows, a chimney pipe puffing lazy smoke into the cold sky. I stepped out and knocked once on the metal door. Nothing. Then again. Footsteps creaked inside. The door opened just enough for one eye to appear. Then it opened wider. He looked older, grayer than I remembered. But his presence was the same, solid, quiet, aware. "Bailey," he said. Not a question. A statement. Like he'd expected this moment all along. "You remember me," I replied. "I never forgot." He let me in without asking why I was there. The inside of the trailer was surprisingly warm, lined with bookshelves, stacked firewood, and a kettle whistling faintly. He poured me a mug without speaking, then sat across from me like he was ready to listen, but only when I was ready to talk. "It's Tess," I started. "She's not okay. She hasn't been for a long time." His jaw clenched slightly, but he didn't interrupt. "Dean's been hurting her, and Martha's been covering it up. We have video proof now, but they've done this for years. Hidden it, covered it, lied about it." I paused. "And I think they did the same to you." He exhaled slowly, like the breath had been sitting in his lungs since the day they cut him out. "They didn't just lie," he said finally. "They stole." He stood, walked to the corner, and pulled out a weathered lockbox from under a pile of blankets. Inside was a copy of Grandma Eileen's will, signed, notarized, and very much not in Martha's handwriting. "Your grandmother wanted her assets split between me and the girls, but after her stroke, Martha changed the paperwork. Said Grandma revised it, new signature, new witness, conveniently after Eileen lost her speech." He looked at me, calm but sharp. "I tried to fight it. I went to the county clerk. Next week, I was fired from my job. A week after that, someone broke into my apartment. After the third anonymous report to Child Services saying I was unstable, I left town, took the trailer, disappeared. It felt like someone had thrown a rock through every memory I had of my mother. I looked down at the will. My name, Tess's name, equal shares. This could change everything, I whispered. Only if you're ready for what they'll do to stop it, Henry replied. I didn't answer right away. I just slid the will into my bag, zipped it shut, and looked him in the eye. They already tried to destroy us. That didn't work. I'm not scared of them anymore. He gave a slow nod. Good. Then you'll need this too. He reached into the lockbox again and pulled out an envelope. Inside were photographs, old ones, of Martha and Dean signing insurance papers, of the same notary used on the forged will. Follow the paper trail, he said. It always leads somewhere. I drove back to the cabin just before dusk, headlights cutting through the woods like a warning. Tess was waiting on the porch, blanket over her shoulders, sketchbook in her lap. She didn't speak, just looked at me. I held up the envelope. We're not just fighting them now, I said. We're proving they never should have had power in the first place. I didn't sleep that night, not really. Just drifted between memories and strategy, head against the window pane, fingers tapping out court arguments I hadn't written yet. Every hour or so, I checked the front door. No headlights, no figures in the dark. But the stillness didn't feel like peace. It felt like the kind of silence that comes before something breaks. At sunrise, Tess handed me an envelope. I found this in Mom's filing cabinet last summer, she said. Didn't know what to do with it, but I kept it. Inside was a letter from the Social Security office, confirming her monthly disability benefits, direct deposited into a joint account shared with Martha Weston. Not Tess, not even a legal guardian, just a mother who had convinced the government her daughter wasn't capable of handling her own money. I felt the breath leave my body in one clean sweep. You've never seen any of this? I asked. Maybe $20 here and there, she replied. Only if I asked for something specific. And even then, I had to explain why I needed it. I opened my laptop, logged into the old account I'd helped her set up 2 years ago, the one she never used because Mom said it was too confusing. The transaction log read like a confession. Every month, like clockwork, the deposits went in. Then came the withdrawals, in full. Usually within 24 hours, always cashed out in person. I didn't need a forensics team to tell me what was happening. She's been living off you, I said. Tess looked down at the chipped mug in her hand. She always said it was her job, taking care of me, that it was hard work, that I owed her something. My fingers curled into fists on the table. There was something about that phrase, I owed her, that stuck to my teeth like blood, as if survival came with interest. I want to report it, Tess said softly. All of it, the fraud, the forged will, the money, not just the bruises this time. You sure? I asked. She nodded once. I'm done making it easier for them. By midday, we'd packed everything into a binder. Photos from Uncle Henry, the original will, the SSA letters, screenshots of the account activity, stills from the video clips. I scanned everything twice, saved it to a USB, then emailed a copy to Sharon, my friend from Seattle who worked in legal advocacy. She called back within 20 minutes. Jesus, Bailey, she said on the line. You've got enough here to build a civil suit, a criminal fraud charge, and probably a motion to freeze any financial activity tied to your mom. But if you're going to do this, you need to do it fast. The second they sense you're moving, they'll try to bury everything. They already buried us, I replied. We're just clawing our way out. She gave me a list of things to gather, names, dates, photos, official forms. I wrote it all down in the sharp black ink and didn't stop until my wrist cramped. Then I looked over at Tess, still on the couch, one leg curled beneath her, drawing in the margin of an old newspaper with a broken pencil. We'll need to go into town tomorrow, I said. Court clerk, bank office, local legal aid. You okay being seen? She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. If I have to look her in the eye, I'll do it. That night, I pulled out a blanket for the couch and made sure the fire wouldn't burn out. But as I turned off the lamp, Tess spoke again, her voice low and clear. I always thought maybe she'd get better, that one day she'd look at me and remember I was hers. I didn't respond with a hug or a speech. I just sat beside her, handed her the USB, and said, "Some people only remember what they can control, but this time, we decide what gets remembered." She looked down at the drive, held it like it was heavier than it looked. Outside, the wind had picked up again, brushing pine needles against the glass like fingers tapping for entry. Inside, for the first time in a long time, we weren't flinching. We were watching the door, and we were ready. It was a strange thing, walking into the courthouse with everything we had. I wasn't used to having the upper hand. For years, Dean had power, Martha had narrative. We had bruises and silence. But now we had evidence. Photos, dates, numbers, signatures, a forged will, a flash drive with Dean's voice on it and Martha's lies on record. It wasn't just about proving what they did. It was about dismantling what they built. And I was ready. The courthouse was smaller than I remembered. Red brick, 2 stories, faded flag out front. A deputy stood at the metal detector, chewing gum like it was his only job that day. I kept my hand on Tess's back as we passed through, steady but gentle. She wore the blue sweater with the tiny stitched birds I found in my old box, and she didn't try to cover the fading bruise on her cheek. She didn't need to hide anymore. We made our way to the clerk's desk. The woman behind the glass looked up, bored, until I slid the folder through the opening. "Emergency petition," I said. "Guardianship transfer, fraud report, and witness statements." She blinked, took the folder, flipped it open. Everything about her changed. "You're Bailey Weston?" she asked, eyes narrowing. "Used to be," I said. "Just Bailey now." She nodded once, stood, and disappeared down the hall with the file. 10 minutes later, we were called into a room I didn't expect to be in that day. Judge Monroe sat behind a wide desk, glasses down low, gray hair twisted into something between a braid and a threat. She looked like the kind of woman who'd eaten half the lawyers in this town for breakfast. "Miss Weston," she began, and I nearly corrected her, but she raised a hand. "Sorry, Miss Bailey." "Close enough." She turned to Tess. "You're Tess, correct?" Tess gave a small nod. "Yes, ma'am." Judge Monroe's eyes sharpened. "Can you confirm, under oath, that the injuries outlined in this petition were caused by the man known as Dean Weston?" Tess didn't look at me, didn't hesitate. "Yes." "And that your mother, Martha Weston, knowingly restricted your access to funds and fabricated documentation to maintain financial control over you?" "Yes," she said again. Her voice was small, but steady. The judge looked down at the papers, then up at me. "You submitted a notarized copy of the original will. Do you have reason to believe the version filed with the court is fraudulent?" I reached into my bag, pulled out the envelope from Uncle Henry, and handed her the photo set. Same notary, same signature, same witness, different document. Our copy was filed 2 weeks before Grandma's stroke. The one Martha submitted came 6 months later, after the doctor said she lost motor function. The judge sat back slowly. She didn't speak for a long time, just looked through the papers like she was stitching together a story someone had tried very hard to bury. Finally, she spoke. "These are serious allegations. They require a formal hearing." "I understand," I said. "But until that happens," she continued, "I am granting temporary guardianship to you, Miss Bailey. And I'm freezing all withdrawals from the linked account under Tess's name. This court will notify all involved parties immediately." A silence filled the room, not fear, not panic. Something else, relief. Then the judge added one more sentence. "You're not the first to walk through this courthouse with scars and the truth," she said. "But you might be the first to bring a damn good paper trail." As we stepped out into the hallway, the air hit colder than before. Tess didn't say anything right away, but she reached for my hand, not because she needed it, but because she wanted it. Then I saw them. Dean, standing at the far end of the corridor in a suit that didn't quite fit, flanked by Martha, who wore her pearls like armor. His eyes locked onto mine. He didn't speak, didn't flinch, just stared, like he was trying to figure out whether I was bluffing. So I stared back. 1 breath, 2, then I smiled, tight, unblinking, and turned to Tess. Let's go home, because they weren't in control anymore. And this time, we weren't playing defense. You'd think walking out of a courtroom with a signed court order would feel like victory. It didn't. It felt like we'd just painted targets on our backs. Because power doesn't disappear when it's challenged. It gets mean. It gets quiet. It waits for the first crack in your confidence. And by the time we got back to the cabin, I could already feel it crawling beneath my skin like static. Tess went inside first. She didn't say anything, but her shoulders dropped the moment we shut the door behind us. I double-locked it, closed the blinds, and checked the window latches for the third time that week. I'd never been a paranoid person, but paranoia was a luxury people like us didn't get. We didn't imagine danger. We'd lived it. I had just put the kettle on when it happened. The sound was sharp, fast, and violent. A crack of glass, shattering like someone had thrown a rock through our peace. The front window exploded inward. A cold gust rushed in. Tess screamed. I dropped to the floor and crawled across the rug, heart hammering in my ears. On the floor beneath the broken window lay a rock the size of a grapefruit. Tied around it was a piece of paper, soaked and torn from the broken glass, but still readable. Stay quiet or next time it's not a rock. I read it twice. My hands shook. Not with fear, with certainty. They were watching. I reached for my phone and called the sheriff's office. I asked for someone other than Wallace. I wasn't about to let Dean's weekly poker buddy take this report. A younger deputy named Ruiz was on call. I told him everything. He said he'd come out. I didn't wait. I gathered the rock and note into a plastic bag, set them on the porch, and grabbed the bat from under the sink. Not for show, just in case. Tess hadn't moved much. She sat on the edge of the couch, blanket clutched around her. Her eyes locked on the window like it might throw itself again. I sat next to her, close but not touching. Her lips parted just enough to speak. "Do you think it was him?" "I think it was them," I said. "Which one?" "Doesn't matter. They're scared. That's what people do when they lose control." Deputy Ruiz showed up 30 minutes later. No sirens, no lights. Just a quiet knock and a clipboard in his hand. His eyes were sharp, his questions direct. He took the evidence without smirking, didn't try to downplay anything. When I handed him the court order, he read it carefully, then gave a small nod. "You did the right thing reporting this," he said. "You'd be the first person in this town to say that out loud," I replied. Before he left, he leaned in slightly, voice low. "If they come near you again, directly, you call me. Not the station. Me." He slid a card into my palm. Personal number, scrawled in pen. That told me everything I needed to know about the walls inside his department. That night, I didn't sleep on the couch. I slept in the armchair, right next to the door. Bat in hand, boots on. Every creak of the old wood, every flicker of wind against the siding made my body tense. But they didn't come back. Not yet. The next morning, Tess was quiet over oatmeal. She pushed the spoon in slow circles, eyes distant. "I keep thinking about the rock," she said. Not what it meant, what it missed. I looked at her. She lifted her chin. "They wanted to scare me, but it made me more sure. I've never been more certain of anything." "Certain of what?" "That I'm not going back." She didn't say it for reassurance. She said it like a fact, like gravity. After breakfast, I opened the laptop and went through every document again. The flash drive, the bank screenshots, the will. I filed everything with Sharon's legal team by noon. Then I drove back to the courthouse and handed in a motion to pursue criminal charges for financial exploitation and conspiracy to falsify legal documents. I didn't flinch when I wrote Martha's name at the top of the form. Didn't blink when I added Dean's name below it. Because the thing about people like them, they think silence protects them, but we weren't silent anymore, and silence doesn't survive sunlight. I thought filing the charges would be the hardest part, but it wasn't. The hardest part came after, the waiting. Because once the truth is out, you realize how slowly justice moves, and how quickly people try to twist it back into silence. The day after submitting the motion, I took Tess to the local clinic. Not the one Martha used to drag her to, the other one, 20 minutes outside Elkridge, run by a woman named Dr. Chen. I'd called ahead, explained everything. No sugarcoating, no vague phrasing. Just, "My sister is 17. She's a survivor of ongoing abuse. We need documentation for court. We need someone who will believe her." Dr. Chen didn't hesitate. "Bring her in," she said. "I'll clear my schedule." The exam took almost 2 hours. I waited outside the door, listening through the thin walls as Tess answered every question. Voice low but steady. She didn't flinch when she had to describe how long it had been happening. She didn't cry when she listed the dates. But I did catch one thing that made my pulse spike. The first time he touched me, I was 11. Her voice didn't shake, just stated it. The door opened. Doctor. Chen stepped out, clipboard in hand, face tight with quiet fury. She's strong, she said. But you already know that. I nodded. I'm submitting a full report, she continued. Photos, notes, medical analysis. This is not just a custody case. You're looking at criminal battery, exploitation, coercive control. We're ready, I said. She didn't say good luck. She said, let me know if anyone pressures you to drop this. I've seen how these towns protect the wrong people. When we got back to the cabin, the mailbox was stuffed. I found a manila envelope wedged between junk flyers, no return address. Inside, screenshots, cell phone photos, copies of emails between Dean and a notary, confirming they'd met at a bar, forged paperwork, claimed Eileen Weston's signature post-stroke, time-stamped, dated. One line caught my eye. Make sure the girls don't find this. If it surfaces, the insurance claim is toast. There it was. The motive. Tess stood behind me, reading over my shoulder. Where did this come from, she asked. No idea, I said. But someone wants this out. Maybe not everyone in town's against us, she murmured. Or maybe someone's finally scared of what we're holding. That night, I backed up every file onto 2 separate USBs. One I gave to Tess. The other I mailed to Sharon with a note that read, if anything happens, release everything. I slept on the floor again, just in case, but nothing came. No rocks, no knocks, no headlights slicing through the woods, only quiet. But the kind of quiet that meant they were regrouping. In the morning, I brewed coffee and opened the back door to let in some air. The frost was starting to melt. Trees dripping into the soil. The season was shifting, even if the people weren't. Tess walked out with a folded letter in her hand. I found this in the sketchbook Mom gave me for Christmas last year, she said. I don't think she knew it was still inside. It was a letter from our grandmother, handwritten, short. If you're reading this, I want you to know you're loved. I didn't forget you, I didn't leave you, I just couldn't speak anymore, but I remember, I always remembered. Tess stared at it for a long time. They tried to erase her. They failed, I said. And that's when I knew we had everything we needed. Not just to win, but to dismantle the lie they'd lived in for years. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclamation. Reclaiming a voice, a legacy, a name. It didn't feel like a final act. Not at first. The courtroom was too cold, too quiet, too well lit for a scene that had been building for years. But when we walked in, me in a pressed blazer I borrowed from Sharon's office, Tess in her robin-stitched sweater again, it felt different this time. No fear, just wait. The kind that settles when a storm passes, but the trees are still standing. Dean sat at the defense table looking thinner, like someone had drained the confidence out of him but left the arrogance behind. Martha was beside him, still in pearls, her face set like porcelain, cracked but pretending not to be. Their attorney tried to delay, claiming new evidence had surfaced, but the judge had seen the files, the timeline, the letter, the medical reports. There was no delay left to ask for. When Tess took the stand, the room held its breath. She didn't cry. She didn't stumble. She told the truth in short, clear pieces, like someone laying bricks. Each statement built on the last. This happened. He did this. She allowed it. They covered it. Over and over. And when she finished, she looked directly at Martha. No malice, just clarity. I loved you once, Tess said. I thought that would be enough for you to protect me. It wasn't a stab. It was a sentence. The judge's ruling was swift. Guardianship permanently transferred. Financial abuse confirmed. Investigation opened into the fraudulent insurance payout and the forged will. A federal inquiry would follow. And though we didn't get handcuffs that day, what we got was better. We got control back. We stepped out into sunlight, the air crisper than it should have been for spring. Tess didn't say anything until we reached the car. Does it ever stop feeling like you're holding your breath? She asked. I turned the key in the ignition. Eventually, not all at once, but it starts with exhaling once and realizing the sky didn't fall. At home, we didn't celebrate. We didn't pop open anything or play music or dance in the living room. We just returned to the kitchen, made soup, and ate in the same silence we'd sat in the first night. Except this time, the silence felt earned. Like we were rebuilding something from a place no one could take away. Later, Tess stood at the window, staring into the woods. "Do you think they'll leave us alone now?" "I think they already lost," I said. "We didn't change the locks again. We didn't board the windows. We didn't need to." A week passed, then another. Tess started painting again, quietly, messily, beautifully. Some days I'd wake up to the smell of burnt toast and find her sketching on the porch with Bear at her feet. We planted herbs in an old tin tub and laughed when we realized we had no idea what basil was supposed to look like. It wasn't healing in the dramatic way people imagine it. It was subtle, like a bruise fading without fanfare. One morning, I found her near the shed, digging. "What are you doing?" I asked. She shrugged. "Burying the last sweatshirt he ripped." She didn't need a reason. She didn't need permission. She just needed to let it go on her own terms. Months later, I got a letter in the mail. The state had formally charged Dean and Martha with fraud, obstruction, and exploitation. The court was freezing assets tied to the forged will and launching an audit into the misuse of Tess's benefits. There would be a trial, but it wasn't ours anymore. It belonged to the system now. We had done our part. That night, I brought out the wind chimes from our childhood, the ones shaped like copper leaves that used to hang by Grandma's porch. We strung them outside the cabin, and when the breeze picked up, they made the softest sound, like small truths whispering to each other. Tess stood beside me, arms crossed. "We don't have to stay forever," she said. "But I like it here right now," I nodded. "It's not where we are, it's who we're not running from anymore." And in that moment, for the first time in years, I felt still, not safe, not healed, just still. And sometimes, that's enough.